Good evening. I'm Spot On Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler, and tonight's presentation is titled The Battle Has Begun. And what I mean by that is we have mild air versus frigid air. A lot of back and forth battling going on between the two air masses for Southeast Virginia. And so we're going to get right into it. Before I begin, I'm going to mention all the graphics I use are courtesy of Unisys Weather and Tropical Tidbits. So I'm starting off with a map to kind of show you what's going on. When we talk about the battle has just begun, we talk about a battle between two distinct air masses so far, about the last 5 days or so, and it looks to continue here in the next 5 to 10 days. What we usually have is more of a maritime tropical air mass and southwesterly winds, usually out ahead of these stronger cold Arctic fronts, which come in from the northwest this time of year. So when the winds shift to the southwest on the backside of high pressure and the maritime tropical air comes in, this air mass on southwest winds, the temperatures really moderate fairly quickly, as evidenced by today's temperature into the lower 60s for Southeast Virginia. And then we'll have a 2 to 3 day period. We'll have this continental Arctic air mass moving in behind a frontal passage, which clears the east coast. So really, this is where the battle is, and we happen to be right in the battleground between the clashing air masses of maritime tropical air and continental Arctic air with these cold frontal passages. So I just want to kind of show you what's happening right now and what's going to continue to happen with a lot of up and down in temperature regimes over the next 5 days. So current analysis for Thursday, the 1st of February, it is now a new month of February, and what we see is a broad trough at 30,000 feet situated from the Pacific Northwest all the way through the Central Plains and into New England. The coldest air remains well to the north over Canada. Today we experience more of a southwesterly wind flow from the surface up through 30,000 feet, which brought in much milder temperatures into the 60s for Southeast Virginia. Now back to the west, we currently have a cold front with rain showers out ahead of it, turning into snow right behind the frontal passage. And this is going to be our next weather maker overnight Thursday night tonight, the 1st of February, into the early morning hours of Friday, the 2nd of February. So we do expect some rain, not very heavy. We're not expecting very large amounts of rain. And then maybe a quick transition over to snow tomorrow morning, but no significant impacts to Southeast Virginia. No significant accumulation expected with the transition to snow. The 24-hour forecast, the upper level trough at 30,000 feet has got deeper and has shifted further east. Now the axis centered from central Canada down into the Ohio River Valley. And now this is basically going to be tomorrow morning at 07 local time or Eastern time. We have some rain transitioning over to snow. There is a 1,038 millibar Arctic high pressure system centered over Iowa. And on the front side of the highs, you have north-northwest winds, and that's going to bring in much colder air tomorrow on Friday the 2nd. Temperatures will fall throughout the day into the lower 40s by late afternoon and into the 30s and dropping off rather quickly tomorrow evening as this high pressure builds in, the Arctic high, skies clear, and we will expect temperatures tomorrow night in the upper teens to lower 20s tomorrow night into Saturday morning. So it's going to be very cold again. Again, the ups and downs in the temperature regimes as the battle of air masses continues. 48-hour forecast, the upper level trough has somewhat flattened out. So the core of the cold air still remains up over central Canada. We have more of a zonal flow. Still cold, though, as this Arctic high sits right over the top of Southeast Virginia on Saturday, which we're only expecting high temperatures in the upper 30s for highs on Saturday, but we are expecting a dry day on Saturday. The 72-hour forecast now moving on to Sunday, the 4th of February. Look what's happening now. We got a re-strengthening of the jet stream from the north, another colder air mass in association with another Arctic high is starting to spill down into the upper Midwest and northern plain states. On this day, we expect more of a southwest wind, south-southeast wind becoming more southerly, actually, and that's going to, again, moderate the temperatures on Sunday after a very cold start. Temperatures in the 30s in the morning will moderate rather quickly. We see the high pressure, the Arctic high that was overhead Saturday, is now shifted well offshore into the Atlantic Ocean. The winds have become more south-southeast around the high. That's going to warm up the air mass and moderate it. And basically the continental Arctic air mass will become more moderated. And then we expect another cold front now to be right back to the west of southeast Virginia. And we do expect this rain to eventually move in throughout the day on Sunday. The forecast for Monday, the 5th of February, we have cold air, a deep trough that has now formed up over the Great Lakes region into New England. A lot of cold air will be pouring into the base of the long wave trough. The frontal system, and there was an area of low pressure that will ride up along the front that is now pushed offshore. So conditions will start drying out during the day on Monday. A new 1031 or 1031 millibar high over Missouri. So the drier, colder air will work its way into southeast Virginia by Monday. Moving on to Tuesday, notice now we have a ridge, an upper level ridge starting to build over the western U.S. and western Canada, over the eastern Pacific Ocean as a whole. And then we have a deepening trough again. A lot of jet stream energy is denoted by these yellow colors and the higher wind speeds. That will allow this trough to start deepening by Tuesday the 6th. So we do expect another batch of cold Arctic air that will be into the area. Not quite as cold as the Friday, Saturday. Basically the 2nd, 3rd of February cold, but it will still be cold nonetheless. We have 1031 high just to our north over New York State. Expecting a dry day on Tuesday. On Wednesday the 7th of February, look at this trough. It's starting to deepen, getting even more amplified over the Midwestern U.S. with the trough axis. The colder air is going to try to funnel down into the trough axis. We do have a new area of low pressure that is developing over the southeast United States. And we have another frontal system, basically a lot of rain that's going to start moving back into southeast Virginia by Wednesday the 7th. Again, just temperatures are too mild for snow. Forecast now for Thursday the 8th of February. You see the trough is now shifted further east. We still have some ridging there into western Canada, but the trough is shifted further east, the main axis, which results in colder temperatures shifting east along with the shift of the trough. So we do expect temperatures to cool back down again by Thursday morning, the 8th of February for our area. 1042 Arctic high situated over western Iowa. On the front side of the high, you have your northerly winds and much colder temperatures. Now, temperatures in the long range, 10, 11 February. The coldest colors are indicated by the yellows. Okay, so yellows and oranges. So overall, on the 10th of February, we generally have a milder, return to milder temperatures for southeast Virginia and the East Coast as a whole, with the core of the coldest air getting ready to pivot southeast towards the upper Midwest. And by the 11th, you see how it has changed in its structure, how it's starting to become more elongated here with colder Arctic air again moving to the southeast towards the mid-Atlantic. Looking at teleconnections, I talk about this one a lot. Circle areas here showing again this is Arctic oscillation on the left. The circle areas indicate a strongly negative Arctic oscillation. On the right, a positive Pacific North American pattern. That usually leads to much colder temperatures for the eastern United States as a whole. If you look back here, actually right in there, that was the colder, more prolonged period of negative Arctic oscillation. And that preceded a very cold period from late December to early January for our area. So this does favor a colder pattern across the eastern U.S. So long-range final thoughts. The teleconnections are continuing to favor a cold first 2 weeks of February, as the Madden-Julian oscillation is still slowly transitioning towards a phase 8, with a negative Arctic oscillation and a positive Pacific North American pattern. Now, the positive Pacific North American pattern, that generally indicates that we're going to have a ridge setting up in the western U.S. When what goes up must come down in the atmosphere, so as the ridge sets up in the west, the trough deepens in the east. That would allow colder air and a colder pattern to set in. And we have a very similar Arctic oscillation pattern as earlier in December before that very cold couple weeks. The last week of December and the first week of January, we had very frigid air in place for southeast Virginia. Does not necessarily mean that we're going to get the same type of Arctic air to come in here, but we definitely see shots of Arctic air coming down from Canada. Now the pattern remains very active, so we have these weather systems that are going to pass through the area, looking like every 3 days or so, a new system will move through. Not a major significant storm system, but just little minor systems along with frontal passages. Now what I want you to really focus in on is temperatures just appear too mild because we're getting precipitation in the warm sector of the low pressure systems. We're out ahead of cold fronts, which leads to very little in the way of wintry precip in the foreseeable future. If I go back here real quick, I'll show you. So you notice how we tend to warm up in association with out ahead of these cold fronts and these waves or areas of low pressure that form along the front. And that just seems like it's the pattern. It keeps happening. So no wintry precip in the foreseeable future besides a little bit of a mix to start Friday, the 2nd of February, but nothing major there as far as impacts. Still very possible the jet stream sets up to distribute the core of the coldest Arctic air into the eastern United States. So that is still very possible, but it's also possible that the coldest air remains, just continues to pivot over the far northern U.S. into New England and remain pretty much repivoting itself up here in Canada and not the whole chunk not coming down. So we're going to have to keep a close eye on that. Just a matter of how amplified the trough gets, the jet gets in the eastern U.S. Now, if we get a deeper, more amplified trough, that could lead to greater prospects of wintry precip. So we'll continue to keep an eye on it here at Spot on Weather. And at the present time, we are expecting chunks of cold air to infiltrate into southeast Virginia and the East Coast as a whole. Every 3 to 4 days, we're going to get a new shot of colder air, Arctic in origin, so it's going to be very chilly. You're going to know that by Friday night, tomorrow night, and definitely Saturday. You're going to feel that. So we have very cold periods, which will be followed by milder periods, then colder again. Precip is tending to fall during the mild temperature periods, which leads to more liquid precip and rain and a lack of snow. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it. Again, if the trough or the jet stream were to dip a little further south, that could change the whole prospects on the type of precipitation we may see. Just to throw this out here, again, we haven't thrown this up for a while, but here's how to reach us, where to find us. Facebook, Instagram, there we are on Twitter, and then the website when we do the blogs, weather.weebly.com, and there is our website support email and regular email. So feel free to hit us up with an email. If you need more weather updates in your neighborhood, subscribe to Spot on Weather right here on the YouTube channel for the latest and all of these above as well. All right, that wraps things up tonight. Thursday night, the 1st of February, tomorrow's Groundhog Day. We'll see what happens with the groundhog tomorrow. Spot on Weather. If we're not spot on, we're not doing it right. Have a great evening, everyone.